Hi, my name is Carrie Travis, and this is my New Testament survey presentation. I'm going to be talking about the main idea that I got from the New Testament survey, which is don't put your cultural logic on texts, the Bible, that are about other cultures. So I saw this as a theme throughout a lot of the sections of we need to be careful not to put our own cultural lens when trying to understand the Bible because that will lead to misconceptions and wrong information. So first of all, why were the books of the Bible written? They were written to encourage, teach, lead, and correct those that the authors of the time were addressing. So they weren't written to us nowadays. They are for us. We gain a lot from them. We learn about God through them, but they weren't written specifically to us. So to understand them, we need to understand who they were written to and their culture. So it's important to understand their culture back in first century Mediterranean area versus our own culture. So some examples of the differences is that in first century Mediterranean culture, it was very much an honor-shame culture, which there are some cultures still like that, like Asian cultures, which might have a better they might have a better idea or better understanding of different honor and shame things that we see throughout the Bible. Like, for instance, Paul talks about it is honorable to, and then he says what it's honorable to. For them at the time, oh, okay, if it's honorable, that means I should do it hands down. But for us, like for Western culture, American culture, our culture is more, we think about like individual rights, like what are the rights that people have versus if people have honor or shame. So it might be harder for us to understand that. So it's important to see that difference. And it's important for us then to dig into honor and what does that mean and why is it important, because it's not as common in other cultures, such as the cultures of the biblical times. Another example of how their culture is different than ours is pollution. Back then, you see in the Bible that pollution was actually a religious thing, where nowadays it's just an environmental issue. We don't really think of it in a religious standpoint. Something else is when Paul talks about salvation being a free gift. In my culture, I think, oh, it's free. That means it costs nothing. But that is not what Paul's readers would have thought. They would have thought, oh, I can accept it for free, but it's not free. Jesus paid a lot. There was a lot of sacrifice. It's very, very heavy, that gift that we are given. It wasn't given to us without a price. It's just that Jesus paid the price for us. And so that's really important to know. Something else that was different about their culture versus ours is we just say Jesus was born in a manger in a stable, like in a barn, but that's actually not what it would have looked like back then. Back then, it would have been like a lean-to on the side of the house. So that's just something little that shows that putting our own culture into biblical stories can really be detrimental in our exact understanding of them. So it's important for us to not only understand the differences between their culture and ours, but the culture versus what Jesus was teaching. A lot of people get really confused about these issues over here specifically because they think that what the Bible says is what Jesus is saying in regards to things that are in culture. Like, in their culture back then, women were inferior. But that's not what Jesus said. Jesus lifted women higher. And the poor were inferior in that time, but Jesus lifted them higher, said they are all my sons and daughters. Jesus sat with sinners when that wasn't the culture at the time. Those people were lowly and were not equal, but Jesus said they are equal. And those with health concerns, like the person that was bleeding or people with other health concerns, they were shamed. They thought back then that if you were born blind, there must have been a lot of sin in your family. But Jesus said, no, I wash all sins clean, and he is the one that then he healed them and he lifted them higher. And then also slavery is another issue that a lot of times people say, oh, well, Jesus didn't speak openly against slavery, so he must have condoned it. Well, no, that's not true. Jesus was already coming in and changing the culture so much that he if he would have only come in and said, every single thing you're doing is wrong, 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 you have to change this completely, you have to change this completely, you have to change this completely, people probably wouldn't have listened to him. They wouldn't have understood him. Instead, he came, he met people where they are, and he gently directed people. He called people out when he needed to, but when slavery is concerned, the way that they speak about how people are equal shows that they didn't believe in slavery, but he didn't immediately shake their culture so much that everything fell apart. He did it in a way that made it so that a new culture, a Jesus culture, could be formed. Thank you so much for listening to me talk about the differences between culture and how we should view the Bible. Thanks so much. Bye.